Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be looking into the unit roster of Sparta. This video will serve as a guide for determining what units to bring when facing off against different factions. First up, we have the Laconian Militia. These are considered cannon fodder units of the Spartan roster. They're a low-cost unit with an upkeep of only 100 food, lightweight class, swift-footed, and shielded, which is a nice touch to the cannon fodder units. Their shield value will block 40% of all missile fire hitting from the front side of the unit. They have a low melee attack of 20, but have decent damage and melee defense. These units can be used to be sent into the first frontline engagement before the medium and heavy infantry engage. Since they are swift-footed, they can also be used for flanking with their speed of 48. Next up, we have Spearmen, another basic low-cost frontline unit of Sparta, slightly better than the Laconian Militia, only costing 105 food, which is only 5 more food than the Laconian Militia. Although they are medium weight class, fairly decent morale. Melee attack is quite low with a value of only 18. Melee defense is decently high with a value of 36, meaning they can hold the front line longer than Laconian Militia can, which is typically what you want from a frontline unit. These spearmen have 78 damage, which is slightly higher, although they do have a bonus passive ability, which allows them to do bonus damage when fighting swordsmen or axemen, as well as any large units. These guys should definitely be used for your basic frontline formation in the beginning. Next up, we have Laconian Axemen. These units have no shields, but have high armor values of 45, which is 10 higher than the Spearmen. They are also a medium weight class with charger and have excellent armor piercing value. They have strong vigor, meaning the unit is less affected by fatiguing actions such as combat. They have the same food upkeep as Laconian Militia, which is only 100 food. Charger units in Troy are best used for cycle charging, although you can use these units for flanking purposes or mixing in with your frontline units. They have a melee attack of 25 and a melee defense of 31 with a damage of 80. These are fairly decent stats for the unit cost, and they provide you with an armor piercing option for those factions that bring heavily armored frontline units. Next up, the Laconian Hillmen. These are a two-handed club infantry unit. They are a lightweight class with poor armor piercing value and poor morale, but they only have an upkeep cost of 115 food. They are also swift-footed, so they can be used for flanking, and they also have a passive that gives them bonus combat stats when flanking and also cause fear. They have fairly low armor stats. Their melee attack is 34 and melee defense is 35, giving them fairly decent combat stats, although their damage is only 58. The Laconian Hillmen have the lowest damage of the entire Spartan roster, and that's even including the missile infantry. Their decent charge bonus combined with the swift-footed ability make them a formidable flanking unit, but should not be used for anything else. Alright, so now we have the generic axemen of the Spartan roster. They are a medium weight class, shielded, and have fairly high armor values with an upkeep of only 120 food. Their shield value gives them a 40% chance to block incoming missile fire. High morale, meaning they can be used as a great frontline unit. Decent melee attack and melee defense values with a damage of 72. These guys are basically an armor-piercing frontline unit, which can be quite effective to pit against heavily armored infantry front lines. Here we have the Shielded Spearmen. Shielded Spearmen can be considered the standard frontline of the Spartan roster. They have an upkeep cost of 95 food and 40 bronze. This is where the more advanced units start to cost bronze as well as food. They are a medium weight class, have decent armor, and are shielded, providing them with a whopping 60% missile fire block rate. They also have a passive ability called Battlefield Healing, which allows them to replenish hit points outside of combat, and they are able to switch to two-handed spears if necessary. Decent morale for holding the line, melee attack of 30 and melee defense of 48, which is pretty high for the unit cost. Their damage is 90, which is decently high, but their main purpose is to hold the front line. Next up, we have the Laconian Swordsmen. These guys are medium weight class, have 60 armor, which is slightly higher than the shielded spearmen, but they have a 55% missile fire block rate, which is 5% less than the shielded spearmen. Now they actually have similar stats to the shielded spearmen, but they have higher damage output at the cost of defense. They have an upkeep cost of 150 and only 20 bronze. They have a melee attack of 36, melee defense of 40, and damage of 125, which is 35 points higher than the spearmen. They have strong vigor and reduce the bonus effects of attackers when they are flanked. Laconian Swordsmen should be used in the front lines as well, but you should use these guys to face off against the weaker sections of the enemy front line if possible. That way you can break through more quickly and collapse onto the middle of the enemy front line. Here we have the light spear runners, which are the first unique faction units for Sparta. These are lightweight class infantry that are shielded, have decent armor piercing values, and are swift-footed. They have an upkeep cost of 110 food and 20 bronze. Their missile block rate is 45%. These guys have a decent melee attack of 36 and a whopping 54 melee defense. Their damage is 80, but they also do bonus damage to axemen and swordsmen. They have the ability to fire while moving, can hide in tall grass and scrubs, as well as forests, have the ability to stalk, gain improved combat stats when flanking enemy units, and have improved flanking defense. Along with their amazing stats and passive abilities, they are very fast units, which means they are very good for flanking. A few volleys from the enemy's flanks, along with a charge, will rout the enemy front line fairly quickly. Now we have the Armored Spearmen. These are a heavyweight class at the front line at the cost of 155 food and 55 bronze. This is a beefy unit but expensive. They are very resistant to being flanked. They have extremely high armor value of 95 with a 75% missile fire block chance. The morale is outstanding. They have decent melee attack of 38 and have a high melee defense of 55. Their damage is a whopping 125 with bonus damage against axemen and swordsmen. They have improved flanking defense, battlefield healing, and the ability to switch to two-handed spears. These are very expensive units to upkeep, so you need to place the few that you have in the center of your frontline formation. These guys will hold down the center for a very long time. You could even utilize the resistance to flanking ability and have them on the flanks of your front lines to absorb any flanking maneuvers the enemy throws at you. Armored Chargers. These guys are a heavyweight class, two-handed spear infantry with an upkeep cost of 195 food and 40 bronze. They are quite expensive for what they provide. They are experts in flanking, have good charge bonus. They have a very high armor value of 95 and a high morale of 80. Speed is fairly average. The melee attack of 45 makes this unit pack quite a punch on the charge. They also have decent melee defense of 48. Damage of 100 is decent. They also have battlefield healing and improved combat stats when flanking enemy units. These units should be used for flanking the enemy front lines or chasing down missile infantry if you can catch them. Here is another unique unit for the Spartan faction, the Heroic Axe Warriors. They are a heavyweight class axe and shield infantry with an upkeep cost of 160 food and 60 bronze, but they are worth it. They have great armor piercing stats and are heavily armored and shielded. They also have armor piercing missiles. They have a high armor stat of 95 along with a 75% missile block rate. They have high morale but pretty slow speed. If you can afford these guys, you should definitely have at least one or two of them in your army. They can be used to be the center point of your front line, and these guys will not budge. They have pretty high melee attack and a high melee defense of 54. Their damage is high as well with a value of 118, and they also do bonus damage against swordsmen and spearmen. If that doesn't make them amazing, they also have armor-piercing missiles, meaning they can throw a few volleys at the enemy front line before they clash together. These guys are one of the best heavy infantry units for the front line and should definitely be utilized. They also have strong vigor can fire while moving, and improved flanking defense. For the last infantry unit of the Spartan roster, we have the Axe Champions. These guys are a heavyweight class, two-handed axe infantry with an upkeep cost of 125 food and 45 bronze. They have Charger, excellent armor-piercing value, and also armor-piercing missiles. They have 95 armor, 85 morale, 48 melee attack, 44 melee defense, and 128 damage. They also have strong vigor, can fire while moving, and gain increased combat stats when flanking enemy units. These guys can either be used for cyclocharging the engaged frontline units, or cyclocharging the flanks of the enemy front line. Either way, it would be a devastating charge due to the fact that they have armor-piercing missiles as well. Now we are moving on to the missile infantry of the Spartan roster. First up, we have the Achaean Slingers, the lowest tier of the missile infantry roster. They are a lightweight class slinger infantry with poor armor-piercing damage, poor morale, but they have a large ammunition supply. Their upkeep is only 85 food, which makes them quite cheap. They have 5 armor, so mini missile units against these guys will deal massive damage. Terrible combat stats, but that's to be expected of missile infantry. They have 38 ammunition, 160 range, and 21 missile damage. These guys should be used to fire at the enemy missile infantry or firing at the flanks of the enemy front line. Do not use these guys to fire at any heavily armored infantry. They will not be effective at all. Here we have our first bow infantry unit with an upkeep cost of 110. They are lightweight class missile infantry with poor defense and morale, but they have a pretty decent missile fire range. However, the slingers do have more range than the light bowmen. They have 28 ammunition, 140 range, 16 missile damage. These are basic missile infantry and should be used as such, firing into enemy missile infantry formations, firing at the enemy flanks, or providing supportive fire onto lightly armored infantry in the frontline engagement. Now we move on to the more advanced missile infantry, the renowned slingers. These guys are a medium weight class slinger infantry that is very good for using against other missile infantry. Their upkeep cost is 100 food and 20 bronze. They are shielded, so they do have a 35% block chance to missile fire. They have 28 ammunition, 180 range, and 37 missile damage. These are fairly decent stats. Preferably, you would want the enemy missile infantry to be firing at these guys so that they can absorb the missile fire that unshielded units can't take. The renowned bowmen are a medium weight class bow infantry unit with an upkeep cost of 110 food. They are fairly slow but have decent armor stat value of 35. They have 28 ammunition, 150 range, and 27 missile damage. These guys are another one of the missile infantry that should be used to absorb missile fire due to their decent armor value. Lastly, we have the renowned armored slingers. These guys are a medium weight class slinger infantry with an upkeep cost of only 190 food. They are good versus other missile units, have excellent accuracy, and are armored. These guys are an anti-missile infantry unit. They have the highest armor compared to the other missile infantry, along with a 40% block chance. They have 180 range, which allows them to outrange most lower tier missile infantry. They also have a pretty high missile damage of 48. Now we move on to the cavalry portion of the roster. There's really nothing too special about the Spartan cavalry. First up, we have the Chariots. They are a medium weight class chariot unit with an upkeep cost of 160 food. They are two-handed spears with good speed. They have decent armor stats, melee attack of 28 and melee defense of 24, although they should be used for cycle charging and not left in prolonged combat. The charge bonus of 50 makes this a great cycle charging unit. They also have bonus damage versus large units. Lastly, we have the reinforced chariots, which are a heavyweight class chariot unit with an upkeep cost of 190 food and 45 bronze. They have a high armor stat value of 70 and a decent speed of 65, melee attack is 38, and melee defense is 28. Charge bonus is 60, and again, these should only be used for cyclocharging and not kept in prolonged combat. Now we are at the mythical roster of the Spartan faction, the first being the Spartois. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this word. These are a heavyweight class spear infantry. They have charge, unbreakable, and will rampage when damaged heavily. Armor stats are decent. Morale is fairly high at 75. A high melee attack of 54 and good melee defense of 42. They have 131 damage and have decent armor piercing values. They also have a charge bonus of 46. Preferably, you should use these guys to bolster your main frontline engagement. They can also be used to flank, but they are not that fast. Lastly, we have the Cyclops. This guy has Charger, a special missile weapon, causes terror, and is also good versus gaze. The special missile weapon is a boulder toss, and they have another ability called Blind Rage, which gives the Cyclops negative 200% attack intervals, meaning he'll attack slower, plus 250 weapon damage, negative 10% melee attack, and negative 10% melee defense. With a low armor value of 10, they should avoid missile fire of any kind. They have a very high morale of 90 and good speed at 55, and a whopping 58 melee attack, but a fairly low melee defense of 25. Damage is extremely high at 1396 with decent armor piercing value. The charge bonus of this guy is at 50, so he would definitely pack a punch on the initial charge and destroy any units he comes into contact with. So now that we've talked about basic stats of each unit, let's go over the generic mid-game composition for Sparta. This is in no way the best army composition, but it is well-rounded and should be able to hold against many armies you encounter. We're going to have 5 shielded spearmen, 2 Laconian swordsmen, 2 Laconian hillmen, 3 renowned Laconian axemen, 2 light spear runners, 2 renowned slingers, and 3 renowned bowmen. Okay, so we'll have the 5 shielded spearmen in the center with the 2 Laconian swordsmen on the flanks because they actually have increased flanking defense. We have the light spear runners out in the flanks over here. Preferably you would want them hidden in forests or tall grass. Then we have the Laconian hillmen, one far out in the flanks and one nearby in reserves. This guy will be used to intercept any units flanking us, or if there's an opening they can come around and flank the enemy front line. And we have 3 renowned Laconian axemen here in reserve. They'll be used to bolster the front line anywhere it is about to collapse. And then we have the standard missile infantry in the front. They're up there just to get off a few volleys before they retreat behind the main line. And then we have the hero, which is Menelaus. We have him dead in the center here. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed the video and found it informative for your Spartan campaigns. Next we will be reviewing Achilles' unit roster. And also make sure you drop a like and subscribe for more.